The galactic empire of Drexelan was feared across the stars. Their fleets stretched over 100 worlds, their soldiers trained from birth, their admirals tested in a dozen wars. Wherever they expanded, resistance crumbled, and whenever a planet refused tribute, it vanished beneath the shadow of an imperial dreadnought. For over 3 centuries, no one had dared to oppose them directly. Then came the humans. Earth had been discovered late, just a distant blue world tucked in a spiral. Arm, unimportant, and quiet. When Empire scouts first arrived, they expected a tribal species or perhaps some struggling colony. What they found instead was a civilization that had never asked for a place in the stars, but had taken one anyway. They weren't part of the Empire. They weren't part of the Conclave. They were independent, unpredictable, and worst of all, they were laughing. The Empire first tried diplomacy. They sent envoys, spoke in polite tones, offered trade deals that were always one-sided. The humans declined with cheerful sarcasm, and then ignored them entirely. That annoyed the Empire. The Drexelan did not tolerate disrespect, so they escalated. Small warnings. A destroyed satellite here. A disabled outpost there. The humans responded not with fear, but with memes broadcasting jokes across subspace, mocking the Empire's fashion, their ships, even their battle tactics. Entire Drexelan fleets tuned into human channels just to figure out what a spicy Dorito war crime was supposed to mean. But the jokes didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. Embarrassed and enraged, the Emperor finally issued the order that changed everything. Send the Helian Lance. Crush Earth. Make it public. The Helian Lance was not just a fleet. It was the Empire's sharpest sword. Elite ships, command-trained officers, psionic warfare units, plasma lances capable of melting moons. No species had ever survived a full deployment. They were the Empire's best, and they were sent to make an example. Messages were sent in advance, warning Earth to surrender or be annihilated. The response came back 5 minutes later. It was a video. A human general sipping tea, wearing bunny slippers, saying, "Oh no." Anyway, the Empire's War Council almost exploded with fury. The Helian Lance entered Sol System in perfect formation, expecting to face a planetary shield, desperate defenses, or perhaps an evacuation. Instead, they were greeted with silence. Earth was calm. Lights on, cities powered. No signs of alarm got Admiral Vorkel, commander of the Lance, ordered a full scan. The report came back strange Earth had defenses. Yes, but nothing matching. Their level, a few orbital stations, 1 battlecruiser, some older satellites. It was underwhelming, suspicious. He assumed it was a trap and prepared for orbital assault. That's when Earth responded with a single transmission. "You sure you want to do this, buddy?" Vorkel ignored it. Honor demanded action. He gave the order. The Helian Lance launched its first Wave 5 dreadnoughts, firing synchronized. Plasma beams at Earth's orbital stations. The beams connected. The stations glowed and then didn't, because they were gone. Not destroyed, vanished, as if they were never there. Then everything went wrong. One by one, the ships of the Helian Lance began losing control. Engines failed, targeting systems reversed. Shields overloaded. Their own systems turned against them. Vorkel screamed for answers. His command ship shook violently, artificial gravity inverting, alarms blaring. A new signal appeared across every Imperial screen. A human face, casual and calm. No uniform. No medals. Just a young technician chewing gum. "Hey there. Just letting you know, your ships aren't yours anymore. We borrowed them. Might return them. Might not. Depends how we feel." The screen blinked out. A second later, half the fleet exploded. Not from weapons, from the inside. The humans hadn't fought back with lasers or missiles. They had hacked the entire fleet in under 30 seconds. They hadn't even broken a sweat. As escape pods fired in every direction, Admiral Vorkal stared at Earth with one thought. They knew we were coming, and they let us. The final ship detonated in a silent blaze. The Helion lance was gone, completely erased. The humans had never fired a shot. And across the galaxy, every species received the same broadcast. To the Empire of Drexelen, thanks for the ships. They were fine. Try again if you want. We'll be waiting. The message was signed simply. Humanity, the destruction of the Helion lance, didn't cause immediate war. It caused silence. A strange, tense silence that spread like a fog through the stars. The Drexelen Empire, once loud with victory songs and battle chants, said nothing. Its news channels went dark. Its war ministers vanished from public view, and its civilians fierce and proud lowered their banners. Across the galaxy, everyone watched and waited. The Empire, the unshakable conquerors of 100 species, had been humiliated, not by a massive invasion or an overwhelming fleet, but by laughter, by a single planet, by a few humans who didn't take the threat seriously, and then erased the finest fleet the galaxy had ever seen in seconds. And the worst part, the part that kept admirals awake and councils whispering, was that Earth never celebrated. They didn't gloat. They didn't threaten. They didn't even bother responding to the confusion. It was as if the entire event had been a mild inconvenience, like brushing away a fly dot in the vast halls of the United Stellar Council. A special session was called. Delegates from 56 advanced civilizations gathered to discuss the human problem. Not the humans themselves. Those were still considered odd but tolerable. No, the problem was the unknown. What technology had they used? How had they taken over the fleet systems so fast? And if they could do that to the Empire's elite force, what else could they do? Some wanted sanctions. Others begged for treaties. A few mostly younger species thought humanity should be isolated until they could be understood. But every plan collapsed under the same realization. Earth didn't care. They weren't asking for a seat. They weren't making demands. They were just existing. And that scared the Council more than any warship ever had. Back on Earth, mood was business as usual. No parades. No global announcements. In fact, most humans were barely aware a fleet had tried to invade. The entire defense had been handled by a small task group within the Terran Defense Network specifically, a division humorously called Digital Shenanigans Division, or DSD for short. It was led by a middle-aged engineer named Mia Tran, who had been working remotely from her living room when the Helion lance approached. She hadn't even gotten out of her pajamas. With a mug of coffee in one hand, she'd run the code to hijack the fleet systems using dormant backdoors in their quantum drives backdoors. The Drexelen didn't know existed because humans had written parts of their core software decades earlier during a tech trade deal no one had read carefully. That was the human way. While others counted ships and guns, Earth had quietly planted seeds in every system they touched. Not maliciously, just in case. The Empire, reeling from its loss, tried to recover its dignity. It broadcast messages, calling the loss a strategic setback, claiming the Helion lance had been sabotaged internally. But no one believed it. Their silence spoke louder. Weeks passed, then months, and slowly the galaxy began to understand something they had missed for generations. Humanity didn't fear empires because it had seen worse. It had survived extinction-level wars on its own planet, destroyed itself, and rebuilt, stared into the void of space with nothing but steel and willpower, and still made jokes while doing it. They didn't posture because they didn't need to. And somewhere along the line, while the other species had been building monuments to themselves, Earth had been preparing quietly, as if it knew the universe would eventually test them. The Drexelan Emperor, humiliated, summoned a final war council. All remaining admirals, all elite units, were told to gather. The plan was simple. They would launch a second wave larger, faster, smarter, and this time they would not give Earth time to respond. The target, the moon, a symbolic strike. Destroy Luna, show power, erase the insult. The fleet launched at once, faster than light drives stretched to the limit. But before they reached halfway, every ship stopped. Frozen in space, not by weapons, but by permission. Their drives refused to continue. Navigation systems refused to lock. Internal I refused to obey. Messages began to pour into the fleet. Each screen lit up with a smiling human face. And now? Words. You've entered the Earth-Luna zone. Your software has been upgraded. Please reboot and try again. Never. One by one, the ships turned around and limped home. The Drexelan Empire fell into chaos. Not from battle, but from realization. They weren't in control anymore. The war wasn't lost in fire. It had never even started. Meanwhile, on Earth, Mia Tran sent an email to the Terran Defense Council. Hey, so the Empire tried again. It was cute. They've stopped now. I'm going back to sleep. She logged off. The Earth Defense Network marked the second incident as handled, and the world moved on. But the Galaxy DIDN single quotes teat et al. Across deep space. Ancient empires and quiet observers watched the humans with new eyes, not just as a threat, but as something else. A mystery. A wild card. A species that laughed at destruction, drank coffee during invasions, and erased legends while barefoot. In their homes, some wondered what else they were hiding. Others decided never to find out. The humans had erased the Empire's best in seconds, and never raised a weapon. And that was the most terrifying part of all. Far below the ice sheets of Antarctica, where ancient winds howled above and silence ruled the depths. A door opened for the first time in over 100 years. It wasn't a grand door or a visible one, just a hatch, flush with the frozen ground, hidden beneath a centuries-old research outpost no longer marked on any map. A single figure walked through it, their boots crunching over ice. Agent Cale Moran of Earth's Department of Special Contingencies had received the clearance code just hours earlier, following the second failed Drexelan assault. The message had been short. Proceed to archive site Theta. Protocol Arcfire. Is active. Moran wasn't nervous. Not because he was fearless, but because he had been trained for this day since childhood. Every government, every planet, every military thought they knew Earth's limits. They didn't, because Earth didn't build all its strength in orbit. Some of it had been buried, hidden, preserved for a future no one wanted, but everyone feared. Vault he entered was layered with defense fields that no modern scanner could detect. Motionless drones hung like frozen spiders in the air. The temperature dropped 10 more degrees as he passed through the final lock, and there it was. Arcfire core, a glowing, pulsing structure surrounded by cables, old analog terminals, and handwritten logs sealed in vacuum containers. The room didn't feel like a weapon chamber. It felt like a tomb filled with memory. Moran placed his palm on the verification panel, and the system hummed awake. A low voice, half machine, half human, spoke. Welcome, Director Moran. Protocol. Arcfire has been validated. Uplink sequence beginning. All across Earth, buried sites like this one stirred. In the Amazon. Under the sea floor. Inside long-dead volcanoes. Each one linked into a network older than the stars themselves. A defense system not meant for ordinary wars, but for extinction-level threats. Centuries ago, when humanity first realized the stars held more than empty space, it had split into two paths, one for public growth, the other for silent protection. The world had focused on space stations, trade, and diplomacy. But in the shadows, thinkers and engineers had prepared for the worst, creating something no other species had considered: total passive deterrence. Not superweapons, not doom cannons, but systems that could stop wars before they started. Software hidden in alien tech. Worms buried inside planetary defense grids. Emergency override protocols disguised as language updates. Every contact humanity made, every trade deal, every shared piece of technology, it had all been part of the long plan. Earth wasn't building just to grow. Earth was preparing never to be conquered again. Back in the United Stellar Council, rumors began to spread, first as whispers, then louder. A leaked report, origin unknown, claimed Earth had intercepted an ancient code buried deep in Drexalan tech. Written in English, that shouldn't have been possible. The Drexalan predated humanity's entry into the galactic stage by 300 years. And yet the code was real. It confirmed what some had feared. Humans hadn't just learned from the galaxy, they had influenced it long before they were recognized. How? No one knew, but theories emerged. Some speculated the humans had backdoored early FTL blueprints when they first arrived. Others believed a forgotten AI had traveled the stars long before Earth was officially spacefaring. A few even whispered the terrifying phrase, "They were always here." The Drexalan Emperor, now isolated in his floating palace above Garvalin, grew paranoid. His war fleets were grounded. His generals refused to act without confirmation. His science advisors begged for contact with Earth to ask what they wanted, but Earth said nothing. Their silence was louder than any threat. Even worse, some of the Empire's own fringe colonies began to defect, asking Earth for protection, or worse, offering alliances. A civil war whispered beneath the surface, and the Emperor knew the truth. The humans didn't need to fire a single weapon. They had already taken everything that mattered. Meanwhile, Agent Moron completed the activation sequence in the Antarctica vault. The Arcfire Core sent encrypted signals to all Earth-aligned systems across the galaxy's small outposts. Mining stations, research facilities, each one lit up with new directives. Observe, do not engage. Prepare fallback silos. Shield Phase 2 begins. And just like that, the second veil lifted. Ships the galaxy thought were civilian revealed their secondary systems. Mining vessels with planetary disruption beams. Cargo ships with warp-locked nets. Science stations with cloaking fields and deep scan jammers. None of them offensive. All of them dangerous in the right hands. Earth had layered its assets beneath layers of peace. Now the first layer was gone, and still no threats were issued. Mia Tran, back in her quiet apartment, sipped tea and skimmed. Through new logs sent by the Arcfire system, she smiled. The galaxy was so loud, always shouting, always flexing. But humanity had learned the power of quiet preparation. She typed a short message to the Global Council. Phase 2 secure. Recommend continued public silence. Let them wonder. The Council agreed. Out in the black, watchers from other civilizations began moving closer to Earth, not to threaten, but to study. Old, distant species that hadn't taken sides in galactic affairs in over 1,000 years turned their attention toward humanity. They'd seen this pattern before. Not recently, not in this cycle, but long ago. They had watched species rise, shine bright, and then burn out. Humanity felt different. It reminded them of something ancient, something forgotten. One observer, a species known only as the Croithinu, left a single message in the Council archives. Before vanishing from known space, we have seen the spark behind their eyes. They are not children. They are not reckless. They are the echo of something old. Treat them with caution. The message was ignored by most, but some read it twice, and far beyond the spiral arms, in places where no FTL beacon reached, a signal moved, slow, purposeful, headed toward Earth, because not all forgotten things were sleeping, and the humans had just been noticed somewhere beyond the edges of known space, where the stars grew thin and time itself seemed slower. The signal reached its destination. A dark object drifted among the ruins of a shattered moon, a place charted by no modern species, forgotten by even the oldest star maps. But the object was not dead. It had been listening, waiting. Its hull was ancient and smooth, blacker than any shadow, absorbing all light. No name was painted across it. No power signature revealed its function. But inside, something awoke. Systems long dormant blinked online. Quiet pulses echoed through the void, not in sound, but in thought. It was a warning system, a final watcher, built not by humans, but by something that had once watched over them, something that hadn't forgotten Earth. And now, the humans had triggered it again. Back on Earth, the sky was calm. Cities moved on. Children played. The internet laughed. But beneath the surface, Earth's inner circle knew the truth. The Arcfire system had detected an anomaly, an old, slow-moving thought. Signal, unlike anything seen before. It had come from far beyond Drexalan territory. Deep space. The kind of deep that scared even the Conclave's long-range probes. Mia Tran sat again in her small control hub, fingers paused above her console. Agent Morin stood beside her, grim. The signal wasn't hostile, but it wasn't random either. It was precise. A message sent to Earth. A single sentence in ancient code translated loosely as, "Are you awake?" For the first time, Mia didn't smile. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "They're not asking if we're awake," she said quietly. "They're asking why." The council reconvened in emergency mode. Arcfire vaults across Earth increased power. Satellites turned inward, searching not for enemies, but for memories. What had humanity forgotten? What had their ancestors hidden? Even from themselves? The archives revealed stories dismissed as myth, accounts from Earth's earliest explorers, missions that never returned, signals captured and erased from public record. A name kept appearing: Project Guardian. No records, no files. Just footnotes, often redacted, always followed by a warning, for silence only. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council trembled again. Not because of the humans this time, but because they too detected the signal. And unlike Earth, they recognized its source. It was a signal they had hoped never to hear again, one that belonged to a race so old, so advanced, it had no known form or name. The ancients, some called them. Others called them the first memory. They had been gone for millennia, leaving behind only ruins and dead code. But now, something of theirs had moved, and it had reached out not to the Drexalan, not to the Council, but to Earth. The Conclave panicked. Emergency proposals flooded in Contain Earth. Isolate the signal, shut down long-range comms, but none dared act. Because now it was clear, humanity was connected to something far older than anyone realized. Maybe they had been shaped by it. Maybe they were its legacy. No one knew. But the evidence was growing. And every moment the humans stayed silent only made the galaxy more afraid. Admiral Threx of the Scarron Armada, one of the few who respected humans from the beginning, made a quiet journey toward Earth, bypassing all known trade routes. He didn't come to threaten. He came to understand. His ship sent a single coded hail. "I come unarmed. I seek only the truth." To his surprise, Earth answered, not through weapons, not with threats, but with coordinates and an invitation. He landed in Greenland, on an unmarked pad beneath auroras that shimmered like ocean waves. Mia and Moron greeted him in person. There were no guards, no displays of power, just quiet and stars above. She led him underground, far beneath the surface, into a chamber filled with starlight artificial, projected from above. At the center stood a single object, not human-made, a smooth black sphere humming softly. Older than any technology, older than recorded history. We didn't build this, Mia said. But our DNA, it reacts to it, and it only responds to us. Threx stared, his breath visible in the cold air. What is it? We think it's a key, she replied. To what, we're still learning. But the real question is, why was it left for us? As if in answer, the sphere pulsed once. A new signal emerged, not a message, but a vision. Images filled the room, stars forming, galaxies spinning, and a shape in the dark, something massive, something living, woven through space like a storm of memory. And then Earth, blue, fragile, guarded, and in its orbit, 12 forgotten stations now gone, labeled the first circle. The vision ended. Silence fell again. Threx turned slowly. You were chosen, not because you're strong, but because you remember, because you're dangerous, only when needed. Mia didn't respond. She didn't have to. Earth had never asked for power. It had been left a puzzle, and humanity had simply solved it over time, laughing all the while. That night, across the stars, something else stirred. The ancient watcher in deep space opened its final relay. A beacon lit up visible only to those with the right code. And far away, beyond known maps, dozens of points blinked back, silent, patient, ready, because the moment had come. The universe wasn't ready, but the humans were. Across the stars, in dark corners untouched by light, the old things began to wake. Hidden artifacts, silent guardians, ancient machines long forgotten, each one responded to the beacon that Earth had unknowingly triggered. Planets without names shimmered as unseen constructs emerged from under their crusts. Moons cracked and opened like eggshells, revealing cores that pulsed with power far beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever catalogued. And in the hearts of once dead systems, something even more terrifying returned. Memory, not data, not records, but memory alive, thinking, watching. And it was all focused on Earth. But back home, humanity remained strangely calm. There were no massive parades or global announcements. No declarations of dominance. Instead, life went on. Coffee shops opened, children went to school, satellites adjusted their usual drift. Even the internet stayed the same, flooded with cat videos, conspiracy theories, and memes about the Drexelen Empire's epic space fail. If the world was preparing for something, it didn't show it. But deep beneath the surface, something massive was taking shape. Something called the Aurora Gate. The Aurora Gate wasn't built in a lab or launched from a spaceport. It had always been there, buried under the southern pole, frozen in ice older than recorded time. Scientists didn't understand it, but it responded only to human interaction. When activated, it pulsed in colors that didn't exist in nature. It opened not into space, but into possibility. Where it led, no one knew. The Arcfire system had kept it secret for centuries. Now, after the ancient signal was received, it began to pulse with urgency. Mia Tran, leading Earth's inner council, stood before it once again. With her was Agent Morin, silent as ever, and Admiral Threx of the Scaran, the only alien ever allowed to witness what lay beyond the gate. They weren't meeting as enemies anymore, but as watchers, and perhaps the last line before something far worse than war. Beyond the gate, Earth's hidden legacy waited. Not a fleet, not a weapon, but a truth. One humanity had only recently begun to understand. They were not conquerors. They were not inventors of destruction. They were, somehow, descendants of something ancient, something that had once watched over the stars and left behind guardians in the form of a species too stubborn to die, too curious to stop asking questions, and too dangerous to provoke. Their visions revealed more now. Earth had not been randomly seeded with life. It had been selected, built slowly, allowed to burn, fall, rise, and burn again. Every war, every tragedy, every victory, all part of a design. Not one meant to create rulers, but to create rememberers. Because the ancients had made a mistake long ago, they had erased themselves to stop something worse. And Earth was their backup plan. The Drexelan Empire collapsed in fear before the truth could reach them. Entire colonies rebelled. Ships went silent. No more fleets were sent. No more threats issued. They saw the signs and chose to retreat. But others didn't. In a star cluster called the Hollow Reach, a species known only as the Nahari stirred. They were not part of the council. They had never spoken. But they watched. They studied. They saw the signal and recognized it as something forbidden. Where others feared, they prepared. Their fleets, shaped like knives and shadows, moved toward the edge of Earth's reach, not to conquer, but to erase. Because the Nihari believed in a simple law, the old must never return. As Earth prepared to open the Aurora Gate completely, the first Nihari ships entered Sol's outer edge. Unlike the Drexelan, they didn't announce themselves. No signals, no warnings, just movement, silent and cold. But Earth saw them coming. Every satellite, every deep sky monitor, every hidden sensor locked on. And again, the planet did not panic, because Earth didn't need to react. It had already predicted. Mia stood before the gate, now glowing in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She looked at the others, nodded once, and gave the order. Open it. And the stars bent. The Aurora Gate opened, not in space, not in time, but in understanding. Through it came not ships, but shapes, flickering forms of light and memory, reminders of what once was. They weren't human. They weren't physical. But they remembered humanity. The gate allowed Earth to speak with them, not in words, but in intent. The Nihari fleet entered attack formation just beyond Mars. But as they aligned their weapons, they found their systems. Paused, not disabled, not jammed, just undecided. Their I refused to target. Their power relays hesitated. The ships knew somehow that what waited on Earth was not to be touched. In the council chambers across the galaxy, silence reigned again. Reports came in, one after another. The Nihari were falling back, not in defeat, in surrender. Some of their captains even broadcast the message: the laughing world is protected. We were warned. We will not try again. The name spread like fire, the laughing world, not because Earth mocked war, but because it never feared it. The humans laughed before battles because they knew what came after. And now, so did everyone else. Earth never became an empire. It never built a throne or forced treaties. It simply opened its gate and let the galaxy see the truth. It was the backup flame of a forgotten fire. A species created not to dominate, but to remind of what could happen, of what once was, of what must never return without preparation. And in the end, that was enough. Mia Tran returned to her home. The Aurora Gate dimmed, but never fully shut. Agent Moran went silent again, watching the stars. And Admiral Threx returned to his people, carrying the most important message of all: do not provoke the humans. Do not worship them. Do not fear them. Just understand. They are the line between memory and chaos. And far across the galaxy, in the quietest corners of space, the old watchers whispered to each other. They are awake now. And the stars, finally, were silent.